So guys, this year has been the most entertaining year in tennis in about 2 decades. As you all know, for the first time in 20 years, none of the big three have won a Grand Slam. How can it be that their reign took 20 years and aging bodies to be ended? Are guys born in the 80s just built different and this was an insane statistical anomaly? Or was it something else? I'm willing to make the guess that at least part of the reason is that forehand technique has been perfected 20 years ago and has actually regressed since then. I'm talking about the holy grail of forehands, the modern forehand. Now, a prime example of the modern forehand is for me Del Potro. He's known to have one of the best forehands in the game ever and used it to win the 2009 US Open. The next clip I'm showing you is of Robin Soderling. He's maybe not as well known, but in his time he's also had one of the best baseline games, and of course that is owing to his huge forehand. If I had to describe the modern forehand in words, I would have to say it's a kind of rotation of the arm alongside the rotation of the shoulders. So there's very little lag of the arm behind the shoulders. They kind of turn as a unit. In the end, I think it's much easier to explain the modern forehand by using video clips, since the mind is extremely good at recognizing and categorizing complex movements of the body. In this clip, you can see Wawrinka, who is not known for his forehand and rather for his backhand, but his huge baseline game relies on his consistent forehand. So the next Grand Slam champion on the list is actually Federer, who has arguably the most beautiful game ever. What's interesting about him is that he changed his forehand technique from about 2003 to the end of his career quite a bit, adding racket lag and decreasing his backswing, moving away from the modern forehand. In a way, I'm willing to concede that the point to which his forehand evolved up until 2009 to 2011 has even benefited his clay court game, though I think it contributed to his more shaky forehand later on in his career. According to him, this change was not something he was consciously working towards. Now, you can make a video about successful tennis technique without talking about Novak Djokovic, of course current Grand Slam record holder, and he's also known to be extremely pragmatic about his technique and is working on it continuously for his entire life now. Although some may say that he doesn't have a modern forehand because of his pronounced elbow bend, I think he retains the essential element, that being the unit rotation of the arm along with the shoulders. I think this solid technique is at least in part what explains his insane tennis in key moments. You may say, well, you've just shown me Grand Slam winners born in the 80s. Isn't it kind of obvious that they're going to have the same fundamentals? That is true. That's just why we're going to look at Grand Slam winners born in the 90s, of which there are actually only two players, these being Dominic Thiem and Daniil Medvedev. What is kind of shocking in looking at these two Grand Slam winners is that they do have significant elements of the modern forehand. Although Daniil Medvedev is actually known for his ugly technique, I think his modern forehand gives him consistency and the ability to cut down mistakes in crucial moments. You may care to check that Thiem as well has elements I would consider a part of the modern forehand, that being a large backswing and again the unit rotation of the arm alongside the body. It seems to me more than a coincidence that the only players of the 90s generation winning Grand Slams both have this technique. Now, if Daniil Medvedev has a modern forehand, the definition seems to be expanding all the time. So, what is actually not a modern forehand? And the most prominent example is, of course, Nadal. Now, Nadal naturally changed his forehand quite a bit during his career, starting out with what I think is a more classic forehand in the 2004-2005 years and becoming more extreme later on. If you look at these clips, I think you can see what is the direct opposite of our definition of the modern forehand, which is that his arm lags behind the rotation of his body by quite a bit. The power and spin that he gets from that is insane. I mean, look at that. Well, doesn't this completely invalidate my argument that the modern forehand is the perfect forehand? I think that Rafa is actually the biggest outlier among the big three, and maybe in tennis ever. The ferocity with which he hits is completely unparalleled, and I don't think anyone can copy it. Without wanting to offend any Rafa fans, you have to admit that his success came largely on clay and slow hardcourt, and that I think is underachieving for a guy that can do this with a ball while he's sleepwalking. Showing you some bad examples almost feels kind of rude and arrogant, since I'm not personally a pro player nor a coach, and these players are obviously working on their game all of the time. But yet, I think that the next clips I'm about to show you, you can see about what I don't like about the next gen forehand technique, which is that the racket face is really wobbly during contact and it leads to maybe a little bit more power, but really a lot of inconsistency. TFO is another example, and although it doesn't lead to inconsistency for him, he rarely goes aggressive on this side, and I think he relies on his good shot selection to stay that high in the rankings. Kyrgios as well has a stereotypical next-gen forehand, and although he's known for some really crazy slap shots, he can't hold his own in a long rally against some of the other players. Although this doesn't hurt him too much since he just tries to end the point really quickly. Let's move on to the reasons I made this video. These reasons are called Sinner and Alcaraz. These seem to be the new Grand Slam winners on the tour, and I think their techniques are very interesting from a modern forehand perspective. You can see that Carlos definitely has modern forehand elements in it, and that his arm rotates alongside with his shoulder. Though I think there's a little bit of a rougher flavor, and that may be causing some of his inconsistencies, which he's been having lately. The most interesting case to me is actually Sinner, since on first glance he obviously has a next-gen forehand. But I think this is an illusion. Due to the extreme arm bend and western grip, his forehand looks next-gen, but you can clearly see him rotating his entire arm alongside his shoulders into the shot. This gives him a lot of stability. Even his racket face at and after contact is quite stable, owing to this unit rotation. Maybe I'm just seeing ghosts and suffer from serious confirmation bias, but that's why I'm definitely interested in hearing your comments.